In my life, context has always seemed very useful. Having context of any situation or pursuit we're going about really is beneficial in two ways. It's beneficial because it ensures that we're not getting stuck in any dead ends. We're not just going about something that will bear no fruit, have no rewards. And the other thing context is really great for is it really enables us, or in my experience, enables me to be more calm in a pursuit that I'm going about. In theory, in our life, if we have pursuits that we're going on them because we've already deemed them as meaningful. And I think one of the punchlines of life is even once you get every attainment you could have ever desired, you're going to wish and dream that you enjoyed the journey getting there, but you won't be able to go back. So context is also really a saving grace in that respect too. So obviously we're on the meditation channel, and the main thing that I'm talking about, the main thing that changed my life and was so radical, was this insight into the nature of consciousness. I used to think the nature of being, me, existing, was significantly different to how I now relate to it. I used to think that there was a separate self to experience. There was an experiencer of experience. There was a thinker of thoughts. There was some substantial, separate, significant me that was separate from my experience, controlling and enacting will, using a lot of effort to be and to move forward in my concept of how life worked. I had this concept, I have to make choices to get places. I was very accountable, responsible. These things all I still consider and think about, and they're still useful to think about. But now I recognize that the nature of my existence, as a matter of experience, the nature of consciousness, is selfless. There is no separation. There's just a flow of experience spontaneously arising moment by moment, and the utility of that is that it feels very free. I think it's a more generous way of speaking about it is to assume that you can have moments of this insight, and then ultimately what we would consider, a glimpse into enlightenment, and then enlightenment would be sustaining that insight for the rest of your time that you are. Today what I want to give you is the context. So if you're going for the pursuit of enlightenment, the pursuit of constantly recognizing the selfless nature of consciousness, here's some context to help you along that journey. I'm going to make this video in two parts because I think that there's a relevant two parts to this pursuit towards enlightenment. I think something that a lot of people might assume is that the conventional way to split the context on the pursuit of enlightenment up would be into two categories. One category would be the dualistic side of meditation, and then insight. I think we can get more specific. I think it's more useful to cut this video or cut this talk into the dualistic part of meditation, where you still very much have your conventional understanding of what it's like to be you. You still feel like a separate self, and you're meditating to get to the goal of seeing that there is no self, there is no separate self. And the second piece of this context would be when you can confidently practice non-duality, or confidently recognize the selfless nature of consciousness, because there's some gray zone in there where you're having moments of insight, but you don't know how to recognize easily, at the least, let's just say, you don't know how to recognize the selfless nature of consciousness easily, but you can get to a point where you can practice that confidently. I think at the point where you can practice it confidently, not just the moment in which you've had some insight, but the moment in which you can practice it confidently, that's really when the nature of your practice changes quite significantly how you're approaching everything. Of course it does, because now you're no longer operating in the same way. It's useful to split these into two, because depending on whether you can confidently practice or not, or whether you're still trying to get insights, or you're having insights, it makes certain collections of information more or less relevant to you, of course. So here we are, the context or a model or a map for the dualistic path to enlightenment when you're still trying to develop a confident skill set to glean the selfless nature of consciousness, insight into enlightenment. I think it's useful off the bat to divide this into two pieces. I think there is the aspect of our lived experience of life where we're not applying ourselves to meditation, and then there's that which we consider, applied meditation practice or thinking about meditation, studying about meditation, right? Because our lives are more full, or are probably at this point more full than the contemplative practice of meditation and enlightenment. Most of us, most of the audience I'm certainly speaking to, live our lives. We have families, friends, and relationship, and we don't necessarily consider that to have anything to do with meditation. Of course, ultimately, everything's got to do with meditation, because what we're recognizing is something about the nature of consciousness, and all of that life is still when we're conscious. So it's all becomes an opportunity eventually to practice. But generally speaking, this is what we do when we communicate. It's useful to divide those because we're not conceptualizing our life like that at the beginning. How we're living our life outside of applied meditation, and then applied meditation, which is where we'll start. The first element of applied meditation, I think there's four, when we're getting the context of that pursuit towards enlightenment, and then prior to that, confidently being able to practice non-duality. I think there's four elements, and the first element is study. You should train with teachers. You should read different ideas and traditions. It does matter what you study. Some instructions are going to be more beneficial for you than others. I don't think you should ever feel locked into one particular avenue of study. You can get more context of all the different options you have to study. And you can read, and you can read many different things, and you can get teachings. You get many different teachings, but I just think that the danger there is not knowing that one set of instructions might not be best for us. And I can think of clear examples myself where there's some instructions which I think are entirely useless, and I feel like I see people in these traditions and they make no real progress. But then I do see some other examples in those traditions and they make a lot of progress. So one just needs to have an active relationship into reflecting after some time, is their life, this is the useful question, if you're always wondering whether your meditation is working, is your life becoming more peaceful? Are you having more moments of wisdom and insight? Is your life becoming more compassionate? I think the second part, which really has a relationship to the study, is then applying yourself to meditation, sitting down and meditating, or meditating throughout your day as well. Maybe do walking meditations, but part of that path is that you do actually meditate. And that's hilarious, because that really needs to be emphasized, because a lot of people want to become enlightened, and most of the confusion I speak about as I teach meditation to people is it's clear, they want to have more insight, but their biggest problem is that they're not meditating. And most of your problems start disappearing pretty quickly. Like if you ever have the opportunity to do 1 week of intensive meditation practice, that gives you so much experiential relationship to consciousness or non-duality, or you'll have so many insights during that experience, probably, that most of your questions start falling away. A lot of people are interested in meditation, they don't practice meditation. Meditation can have this this sort of flowy hand gesture relationship with studying. You can study and not understand what you're reading, and then you practice meditation, you're not sure what you're doing, but as you go in between the two, they unlock insights into each other, and you develop some confidence. Oh, this is what I read about, is what you start thinking to yourself, and then you meditate and you go, oh, I'm not sure. Oh wait, if I use... So study and meditation practice really work well together. In general, I think it's useful to then break down, to simplify meditation, break it down into two aspects. One is calming your mind, Why do we need a calm mind? You know, these are exercises where we're focusing on our breath or using an object. Instead of thinking, talking here, figuring out what I'm saying, just calming my mind. Moments like that, where we're relaxing rather than being caught up. Well, why is that useful? We need a calm mind, and we're training a calm mind in dualistic meditation, because discursive thought, where we get caught up and think about things, where we start conceptualizing what is, the habit of constantly conceptualizing, it's like this momentum inside of us that keeps grabbing. That's the opposite of calm. So we need to practice just calming that down. And the more we calm that down, the more our mind stops reaching for things, and the more the innate nature, the nature of consciousness, which is spontaneous, it's selfless, it's self-revealing, that's all on the continuum towards a calmer mind. The selfless nature of consciousness reveals itself without us. There's no self there recognizing it. And having a calm mind is closer to that. So that we're not getting caught up and not recognizing what already is, and so that we're falling into the nature of the self-existing wakefulness of consciousness, self-existing, other than us. It is still, of course, us, however you want to, don't get too confused with the conceptualizations there, but it's not something we effort or enact. It's effortless. That's why we have to have a calm mind. So a lot of practice is about calming the mind and concentrating the mind. Concentrating the mind, like, diligently returning to your object of meditation, because there is something to notice. It's not enough to have a calm our mind and then become zombies and not notice anything. It's not enough to say that we're enlightened and then go about our whole day actually just causing chaos and being distracted. So we also need a concentrated mind. The union of having a calm and concentrated mind, if you think about it just naturally or instinctively, it lends itself to a calm mind and a wakeful mind. You're just left with the reality of what is. You're left with uncontrived consciousness, which is synonymous, or becomes synonymous eventually, with insight into the nature of reality, or the nature of your consciousness, the selflessness of it. You're just letting things be as they are. So that's what a lot of the applied meditation practice is going to be about: studying and then developing or training a calm and concentrated mind, going in between the two until it becomes more natural, and that lends itself to non-dual insight, the perfect practice. But it's just about repeating those things. If you know that, it's not too many questions, that's pretty safe parameters to play in. Whatever you're practicing, if it's calming your mind or concentrating your mind, if you're studying something and it's helping you get somewhere, you're feeling more peaceful and you're going in between these two, that's a good practice. The third element I would include in that, therefore, is, I think a lot of the times our applied meditation practice has an element of struggle. And to that element, I just want to say, struggle is the nature of trying to figure out how to do something. So if struggle is occurring, if we can relax along the way, understand in our hearts that is part of the practice, and that's part of figuring something out, then we can go about the nature of study and applied meditation and everything else. That way we can go about the whole thing knowing struggle is a part of this, and we can relax a little bit more. It might help us be more generous, gracious. It might make things happen a bit easier. Just understanding that struggle is a natural part of trying to figure things out. And all that matters if we're struggling is that after some amount of time we look back and we reflect and see that we're getting somewhere. If we're getting nowhere after a long amount of time, then we might need to change how we're thinking about things. But if we're struggling, that's probably what we're in the pursuit of, is trying to understand how to do what we're doing better. So that's just part of it. And I think it's necessary to identify that, because that can be such a qualia of the journey. It can feel mainly like struggle. But if we understand that it's part of it, then it puts things in perspective, and it's like, hey, it is okay. How's the calm and concentrated? How's the study going? And then, what's the struggle? Can we unpack that? That's fine. Struggle's fine, it's part of it. And then fourth is glimpsing. So as we apply ourselves dualistically in meditation with our general idea of how to meditate, I'll sit here and I'll focus on something. I'm using myself to practice. Within that journey, before we're confidently practicing non-duality or insight, there's glimpsing and not being sure if that's the goal. We're experiencing more moments of freedom, but they're either very short or they seem to have different flavors or colors or taste to them. The insights seem to change. We notice the non-duality of some senses, but not the full freedom. So non-duality can kind of dazzle us, and we can be unsure of what the real practice is. And I think it's really important to say, because people get really confused about this. I talk to a lot of people, and they're really wondering if whether the one insight they had sometime was the thing, and if they should be trying to get back there. So it's a crucial intervention to say, all you need to be practicing is the calm and concentrated mind. Don't get too worried about the insight and glimpses you have, because ultimately, if you're going on the full journey to be enlightened, you will need to have a ultimately calm and ultimately concentrated mind. You'll need to have this recognition all the time. But the training's actually the same. The training is not conceptualizing your present experience and just recognizing it for what it is. And it happens to be selfless. But there's no grasping. I guess that question was that it is an act of conceptualizing and grasping, trying to return to something. But it's freer than that. Most of that confidence is actually going to come from just practicing more and getting more moments. I certainly had moments of insight very early on in my meditation practice, which I wasn't able to confidently say those were non-dual until more of my life became non-dualistic, and then it was more obvious. I guess there's probably some people out there who say it's undeniable, but I don't know if that's useful to say. I don't think if it's useful to go out there looking for one moment. I think it's probably better to say consciousness is an interesting thing, and we can get more aware of it, and we can get gradiently more aware of it. I think it's more generous to ourselves and more useful to see that we're always making progress. We get calmer minds. We don't have a crazy mind or a calm mind. We get calmer minds, more concentrated minds. And compassion develops. Everything, grows in this sense. I think it's just more useful. If we're looking for some indicator of what the goal is, how do we tell that this was the non-dual insight? It has to be something which is compatible with consciousness all the time. Could this thing you're recognizing be something that you can recognize when you're with other people, when you are thinking, when you're out? Is it the nature of all conscious experience? If it's just a momentary experience which is colored in some way, which happened when you were sitting down, that you can't possibly conceive of how it's recognizable when you're having a conversation with someone, then it's not the thing. But if it's something that also has that capacity to be recognized through all the different appearances of your consciousness, then that's starting to sound pretty good. But again, at the point at which you're recognizing it, if you keep practicing, and then you can see, you have the experience of recognizing not just when you're meditating, but when you're living the rest of your life, which will come from practicing more, not from understanding what it is, but from practicing it more and having more intimate experiences with it, recognizing it in these different situations, then you probably won't be having a question anymore about whether it was it or not. You'll know by that point, because you'll know it as a fact. So as I was saying earlier, we can split this first part into two parts of dualistic meditation. We've got 4 elements there. We've got studying, we've got meditation, we've got struggle, and practicing more to become confident. And the nature of how it develops, of having insight, whilst we're still primarily dualistic. And then we've got how we conduct the rest of our lives. A user recently asked me to speak on compassion, and compassion, because it's emphasized in all the traditions too, It really is a fantastic idea, concept, and something to embody in our lives on this journey. And there's this beautiful, and compassion means something very different in the dualistic part of the path to what it means when we're non-dualistic. So, keep your ear out for that. I'll talk about it in this section, and I'll talk about it in part 2 as well. So we've got all these wonderful things we do in life, don't we? We do so many interesting things. Meet people, travel, jobs, think about things, hate ourselves. What's one useful, how can we think about this, contextualize this, conceptualize this as a model so that we can support our meditation and pursuit towards enlightenment the most? I've got my own little motto, which for me ensures that I'm conducive. I know my life is conducive if it fits into this little motto or phrasing which I'm going to give you here. Conducive towards that ultimate path of freedom, and freedom to help others on their journey towards freedom. We have these questions about what we should do with our time if we're not meditating. I think we ought to move towards love. Love, controversial word, vague word, good word. Good word because it has capacity. So love can mean different things for other people, but generally, what are we doing here in the world? Compassion or love, same word. But if we're moving towards freedom, then what other word are we going to use? Where is the easiest space or place to apply ourselves to meditation? It's one away from afflictive emotions and discursive thoughts. Most discursive thoughts, where we just get lost and conceptualize things, becomes very synonymous all the times with really strong emotions which tear us away, create more chaos in our life. Really dangerous thoughts, dangerous emotions, those become the descriptions of suffering. And that's also the hardest place to practice meditation. If you've got no meditation skill and you're in that place, that's what suffering is, and it's very unfortunate. And no one should have to go through that, but people definitely do experience that. And that's the hardest place to train your meditation. So we want to move all the elements of our life away from things which manifest that or result in that. And if our life is structured in a way which is towards love, that's going to be the easiest place to practice. And so this is my emphasized point here. A lot of people think that they can meditate to solve their lives. And it's like, I'm not sure. I'm sure you can, but it becomes hard. You're going to need a lot of discipline. Whereas if you can construct your life in a way where it's spacious, there isn't hinders, and you can move out of inspiration and passion and a desire to help other people, even if they're conceptual, they're more conducive towards the pursuit of enlightenment. Because, it's going to also help you have a calmer and more concentrated mind. So in every field, you can move towards love. I'm a firm believer that I do believe that there's sort of an innate purity within us, which means we can reflect on an action or behavior or a goal and think to ourselves whether that is of love. Is this of my highest? We're imaginative beings, my most imaginative creative self. Is this the most loving action I can take, or is this the most loving goal I could have? And then some people could say to me, the critique that I would often get from this is people would say, well, why don't you go do very unrealistic things then? And these ideas are often unrealistic because we live, there's pragmatics of the world we live in. The most loving goal for one individual is certainly going to be different for others. When we look at love has to also have results in a way. We can't just fantasize about being a saint if that isn't going to actually change the world or manifest in the consciousness of other people's lives. The most loving action will change our well-being, will change the well-being of others. So I think across all the different facets of life, whether it's relationships, career, we can ask, are we going towards love? Reflect in a moment, take a pause on any faction or fraction of our life, and ask, is it the most loving thing? And then we can do that on the entire category itself, and maybe we would live if we did this, what's the worst that could happen? well, if we're not very intelligent about it, it could be very dangerous. But if we retain some intelligence, we could live very unique and interesting lives that would be maybe more radical in how quickly we change the way things looked. That sounds positive. So how should we conduct our lives? We should conduct our lives by moving towards love, and we should do that through love. If we can get towards love, if we can get to that place, it's the easiest place to create freedom for ourselves and others. Moving through love, that's the quickest way there. Some people have these mentalities in which they think they should suffer and they want the path to be the hardest way, so they go suffer and they train in the hardest way possible. They intentionally create obstacles for their practice because they think that'll make them better. In my experience, it's actually easier, if possible, if it's a pragmatic option, to take the easiest path. If you're going to practice meditation, create a wonderful sacred space, take some time out, do it when you're inspired. If you keep doing that, and if you can do that, because it's not always an option, but if that's an option, moving through love, this is the compassionate, loving way to do it, being kind to ourselves, we will get more experience quicker. The other way, it's not nice to feel like we're not being successful. It will put us off. We won't practice. So if you do it in a loving way, move towards love, through love, we'll actually get more experience. We'll get better quicker. And then practicing in harder situations will be easier. So we're moving towards love because that's the easiest place to find freedom for ourselves and others. And we're moving through love because that's the quickest way to find freedom for ourselves and others. So the last part of my phrase, move towards love, through love, in every immediate moment. In every immediate moment, because I believe as people, or in my own experience, sometimes we have this habit of coarsely conceptualizing our experience. So we think to ourselves, when I accomplish this goal in the future, I will reflect. But conscious is a present thing. We're always present, so we can refine even how we're moving through love. We can refine every moment, ask, if I bring loving awareness into this moment, am I doing this in the most loving way? And if we do that, now our whole life has to transform. So in every immediate moment, I suppose, because it's nuanced and pragmatic, it's real, because it's real. The critique I sometimes get when I say in every immediate moment is people say, what about analysis paralysis? When I get stuck in my head, then I think that's a failure to identify that's not something useful, that's a pattern, that's a habit, that's an unloving behavior. So moving towards love, through love in every immediate moment, it doesn't look a particular way, but it's an inspirational, creative way of finding more capacity and space and challenging, very much fundamentally challenging the habit we have of getting on with things in ways which don't help. And that's really it's a lot of what suffering is. Okay, so that's my context and conceptual model for the dualistic part of meditation. When you're still very much a self, you should reframe your life by moving towards love, through love in every immediate moment. You should transform your life. And that will make it easier, ultimately. It'll make it easier, quicker, and it'll be more nuanced. Your whole experience will be more nuanced when you constantly shift and study what you're meditating in conjunction with how your meditation practice is developing as you train a calm and concentrated mind. And sure, there's some struggles, but you can see the perspective and you reflect and make sure you're making improvements as you have more experiences of insight. But don't worry about it too much, because more and more experiences solve the whole question entirely until you're ready for the second part of the video. What is the model or context for how selflessness, or the non-dualistic pursuit towards enlightenment, unfolds or reveals itself? So I want to finish with a little anecdote which I think kind of can speak to all of this, which is just a story I tell myself or remind myself of sometimes. And it's just this recognition of noticing that there are changes in my consciousness and how I'm able to experience my life. There's a difference where one day you can wake up from your bed and feel very groggy and tired and be so stressed about everything going on in your life, and you can walk, and then you can be so caught up that you slip down the stairs, you bump on the way down, and you hurt yourself, and you're angry, and it ruins the rest of your day. You can be in very much the same circumstances, but you can embody and be more compassionate about how you feel in the morning. You can take things slower, and you might still slip down the stairs on your way out to the world, but you might not get caught up about it for the rest of the day. So those are two options. You can also wake up and live such an examined life towards compassion and love and meditation, have more awareness and spaciousness, that you feel so good that you wake up in the morning and you dance, and you see the thing you're going to slip on as you were moving down the stairs, you can dance around it, and you can dance throughout your life. That's an option as you develop more awareness and you live a more examined life, and you study and become more intelligent, you care for more people, you develop compassion in life. Those are options, those are real options. And when you cross over into the non-dualistic, enlightened freedom part of your life, it's possible to wake up and literally feel like you float down the stairs and you float throughout your life. And I think, the nature of the dualistic part of life is very much that journey. When it becomes non-dualistic, you transcend the whole paradigm of yourself doing things. But it's possible to actualize and develop and see through your limiting beliefs and ideas of who you are, have more awareness and compassion, that your experience of life feels more free. And I think that's the nature of dualism, if we're fortunate enough and we have enough grace in our life that we are interested in these ideas towards finding more freedom for ourselves and others. I'm just going to leave that there. Have a wonderful day, guys. Thanks very much for watching.